Okay, so as I say, everything I'm going to tell you is pretty evident. You probably know it, but do you remember it? Do you use it? So, first question. The content that you guys produce, it's all about words, yeah? Sorry? No. Good. Why? What could it be about then? I suggest to you, it's all about numbers. I was at a copywriting conference in London. Actually, this is the second one I went. The first one I went to. I've been to two now. And the guy stood up and was talking about he was a direct marketing expert, and all he wrote all day long was direct marketing mails. And he said that if he's really lucky and he was one of the best in the business, that's the response he's going to get from his direct marketing. Which I thought was, just think about that. 99% of the people you send stuff to don't read it. And the chances are that when you're putting up stuff, how are you going to make sure that people read it? What he also said was, what he was looking for was that a campaign that they would generate 5 times the amount of sales during the time of that campaign, which I thought was interesting. So even if only 1% of the people are reading it, 5 times as many people during the campaign are going to buy the stuff if he's doing it properly. So basically, it's all about bottom line. I think whatever you're doing, often in my case, it's about bottom line, but in your cases, when you're writing content, the point is that you want somebody somewhere to do something. And I think this is, how do you get the people to do it? What are the steps we could take to do that? One last little figure. That was actually 2013, not 2014. I haven't seen the figure yet. That's how much every single day people buy on the internet in the UK. And that's only business to consumer. If you add business to business and that as well, it's an awful lot more. So I just thought it was an interesting statistic. So just imagine if stuff's not spelt correctly on your website, if your website is long-winded, how much of that how little of that £527 million cake you might be losing simply because of the words you use and the way you express yourselves on wherever, the web or the app or whatever it happens to be. Just a quick one. The same guy said that if you use courier, and I'm talking now in terms of writing actually with paper and sending stuff out to paper, your chances are you're going to get double that response. In other words, 2%. So just by using a particular typeface, and I'm not going to go into typeface at all because I know nothing about it, to be honest with you, but just by using a specific typeface, he could guarantee, he said, double the amount of responses, which I thought was just interesting, which is why I slung that one in. So, obvious stuff. This is what I think about when I'm trying to do something, okay? This is, again, it's pretty obvious, but you're surprised how many people don't do this. And I'll come back to these in a minute. Yeah? Again, I'll talk about that, what I mean by active and passive in a minute. Again, pretty obvious, but you'd be surprised, especially in people who work with IT, strangely enough, how long and complex they can make sentences. Thanks. Again, I don't know why, but people love to make grammar mistakes on a website. Nothing sticks. Maybe it's because I'm sort of, as you say in Swedish, arbetsskada, because of the work I do. It really annoys me when people haven't even bothered to use a spell checker. Would I buy from that company? Does it look professional? No. I mean, you all know when you get spam mail, the way you know it's spam is because half of it's spelled wrongly. You know, so again. And again, people put stuff on the web and then they forget the most important thing at all. In other words, what do you want somebody to do about what you've just put up there and spent I don't know how much time designing, how much time you've put into thought about it, how much fantastic text you've just written to really attract people, whoa, and then you don't tell them what to do next. I found that Sony became very good at this. I can actually give them as an example because they would talk about, I loved a phrase they used once, it was called urban youth. We're targeting this phone at urban youth. Okay, so what's that? Kids in towns, you know, urban youth, what's that mean? But what they would then do is they could break it down and break it down and break it down. So they knew they were going to talk to people between, let's say, primarily girls between, I don't know, 14 and 17, who liked a particular kind of music, would use their phone for a particular kind of activities. Therefore, the vocabulary they could use, the way in which they could again, target by the words they used, they could get a better response because they could test it. I applied for a job, actually I got the job unfortunately and I took it, which is really bad news. And I went to the place and I said, hi, who's your target audience? And they said, everyone. Okay. If people say that to you, whatever you do, don't do what I do. Don't take the job. Go somewhere else. Because it's obvious that whatever you're producing, there is a target audience. In your case, e-health. I've just done a job, strangely enough, for the people who make the phones for older people, and the way you write to older people, even older than Bengt and I, the way in which you would write to them and like, what can you do with this phone and how can it improve your life? I suppose you will find the same, what could I say? You're going to find the same challenges when you're trying to get older people to use your e-health. Greta 88. How could you get them to use it? What kind of prompts can you give them to use it? What kind of words can you use that they feel comfortable with? And this I thought was very interesting. Again, it was actually Tula that showed me this once upon a time. They said, like, lots of people who buy their products, and you're thinking about Porsche, I'm thinking particularly about Porsche owners here. Porsche, Harley Davidson, that kind of people. So you've got this kind of lifestyle picture in all their advertising. How old are they? Any ideas? Any guess? Average age of a Porsche owner? Anyone? Can I hear a figure? Sorry?
50.
Almost dead on, yeah. It's a little bit higher actually, but they say they're trying to lower it, but it doesn't. The way I actually checked it up today, 49. And then Harley Davidson is actually older because it's all the baby boomers that are, look at me, I'm so cool, I've got a motorbike, and then they fall off and kill themselves. So e-health comes back into it really. So that's basically, there's your target group really, but you're addressing this person who wants to aspire to that, because of course he's got all the money that these would love to have, but they've just got 2 kids, and the kids are in doggies, and you know the score. You live in Sweden. So, I was on a copywriting course once upon a time it was actually Oxford University. It was a really interesting course, and there's a doctor, which I thought you always found that very strange, don't you? What are you? I'm a doctor. What are you a doctor in? Words. Okay. But she was a doctor in what kind of words would appeal to to everyone, really. Says he just talked about targeting. But she said the words, Micke, are you around? Oh, he's gone. But please stop me when I've gone over time. Yeah? I just said, please stop me if I'm going over time.
Right.
Okay, so, okay. So this, in second place, this is the word that appeals to us most, because of course, I'm talking to you. And as soon as I talk to you or you or you, great. Think about how people write websites. We are the global leaders. Who cares? Now, honestly, but the word you, as soon as you start you've got a dialogue, which is what you really need to try and get hold of. Obvious number 3. These are actually quite obvious, but you'll be surprised. If you sling them into your conversations, then you'll do well. Yeah? So these are actually in order 2, 3, 4, 5. What's number 1? Come on, geniuses, what's number 1? You know it. Come on, what is it? Something that... It's actually proven that as soon as you put that word somewhere, everybody goes, whoa. Aftonbladet is the classic case in point, isn't it? Whenever you read Aftonbladet, and excuse me if anybody doesn't speak Swedish, but my Swedish is awful still, but you'd have a headline that says, Präst har sex. Big letter präst, big letter sex, and then they say, good chance to på söndagar, or whatever, just imagine the way in which it does. I hate to say, but it does sell. And it is the word, but unfortunately you can't put it in your website about e-health. Well, maybe you could about e-health, I don't know. Yeah. One of my favorite bugbears and one of the easy ways to actually write text that's much more compelling is to use active instead of passive. Let me show you what I mean. You know this because you've done this at school, yeah? Active, passive sentences. Yeah? Here's your passive sentence. Yeah, it has to be done. So in other words, the object, becomes the subject. I won't bore you with this. How would you say this in an active tense?
Go do it.
Sorry?
Go do it.
Same. Go do it, just do it. Yeah? Think about this. In other words, first of all, you're always going to talk to you, you're going to talk to somebody, and secondly, always try to avoid this. And it's the same in Swedish. Everything I say today, by the way, whether Swedish or Dutch or wherever, it's basically the same, isn't it, if you think about it, on how to make text more appealing. So think about this. I actually put in another piece of grammar because what can I say? Everybody gets it wrong and it annoys me. Every time I see this, it gets me upset. Again, it's because, I don't know, I suppose if you study a language, if linguistics is one of your things, then, it sort of becomes annoying. Which is right, which is wrong?
70 is on the left, C is on the right.
Sorry?
70 is on the left and C is
Actually, these are both right and these are both wrong. And the thing is, and I'm convinced about this, people who know more about this can tell me, but I'm convinced the reason for this is because once upon a time when you used Microsoft Word, if you tried to put in capital P, capital C, and then an S, the C would just go jump. So people started to put in an apostrophe. This is what's called a sentence. In other words, the PC's bag, the 70s what? It doesn't exist, but everybody puts it in. And if you wanted to think about this one, what should it be? Just out of curiosity. Anybody? Yeah?
Apostrophe after the S in voice.
Yeah. Or could you have it before the S?
Yes, then it's a single boy.
There's only one boy. Thank you. But I just wanted to, again, it's probably you know this, but it annoys me that people don't. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so, a couple of obvious rules. I don't have to say it. Yeah, Swedish people. You love to shout. Why? You're so quiet, timid individuals. And yet when you write, hey! Hey, dog! It really amazes me that you do this all the time. Every single sentence a Swedish person writes, they'll put an exclamation mark, which is actually signaling you want to shout. Isn't it? Hello! How are you? Bolding. People think if you bold it.
If that's the case in Sweden, why shouldn't you do that in Swedish?
Because you don't shout.
Maybe you would like to shout.
But don't you? Okay, does that mean you're all schizophrenic because you really want to shout, but you don't? But but actually, I find I think the point I'm making here really, and it's an interesting comment back to me. The point is that if you overuse things, if you overuse bold, if you overuse this, then it totally loses its effect. If you use it once, somewhere, then it has an effect. And again, you don't. What I'm trying to do is, how can you entice readers of what you're trying to say rather than drive them away? And I think that's one way of doing it. Yeah, and again, you know this. You know all this. I love putting certain things. If somebody says, well, what's your job? I often say, well, actually, I write bad cliches for good companies. And I find some kind of wording that I think, this is great. Wow. And the client goes, But, be ruthless. Have a look at what you think is good and think to yourself, is it that genial, really? I mean, I think it's funny, but is anybody else going to think it's funny? Yeah. So think about, the phrase "killing your darlings." Yeah. Yeah. Don't ever stop. Look at it again. Look at it the following day. Look at it the following week. Look at it the following month. You'd be surprised how many people write stuff in a text and they'll say, "We have 45,000 employees." So what? Our technology, our database is SQL. Cool. So what? Can you answer the question? Our 45 employees are there to serve you. They're always on hand so you can get the help you need. Back to you. Yeah? So every time you write something, think, so what? Yep. Keep out the long words. If you think about it, often everything you write in English is going to be read by somebody who's probably not English. Says I, speaking to a room probably full of people who are not native English language speakers. But again, people tend to, especially I find possibly local central government, people tend to over-elaborate on this. And last but not least, yeah, I missed one off there, but it doesn't matter. You've only got one thing you're doing when you're writing. Get yourself a decent header, and then you've got to get people down to actually do what you want them to do, whatever it is you want them to do. Yeah? Unfortunately, this one's dated. I can't get into the Sun now without having to pay for it. But I used to go into the Sun every single day, and I used to marvel over their headers. I thought they were wonderful. It's just like, it's an art form. Writing a good header is an art form. If you follow a couple of simple ideas, it's really quite, it's actually pleasing to do. Once you find something, you say, yes, this is cool. Pretty obvious stuff. Make sure it appeals to people's self-interests, arouse curiosity. Yeah, I must tell you about Say Cheese. We were writing the Tetra Pak website. I don't know if anybody comes from Tetra Pak, but we're writing the Tetra Pak website, and Tetra Pak, as you may or may not know, they do cheese making machines. So we thought, okay, smart. A big round cheese with a big smile on the face, header, Say Cheese. Translated to Swedish was, Say Oost. So we realized, I mean, even Sweden, where you have such a very highly developed sense of English language, that you have to be careful with what you do with a header. Because if it's going to be translated into 24 languages, what's Say Cheese in Russian, for instance? Nobody, seriously. And again, you think you're being smart, you think you're being clever, doesn't. Don't use these, for obvious reasons. No ordinary software, yeah, it's crap. I like these myself, if you can ever think of them, but again, it could often be a problem when you translate them to other languages. A couple of other things about headers, and I'll actually, I must be getting close to my time span now, so I'll wind up quickly. Basically, make sure it's a Twitter feed, or if you want to, make sure it can be used as a Twitter feed, then you can do much more with it than just a header. Yeah, start with what's at the top, finish at the bottom, pretty obvious. But only one idea, short and meaty. Don't do this. This is a communication agency. Yeah. That's where you'd normally stop, yeah? So on a Virgin train, going from Chester to London, and I've got a splitting hangover, because I've been obviously out at Chester with friends of mine. I go to the toilet on the Virgin train, and it says this. And then it says this. And then it says this. And then it says this, and then it says this. I just thought it was such a nice thing to do. I mean, you've got this is basically where everybody else stops, but just put in a little bit of thought and a little bit of effort in, and all of a sudden it's a really appealing story. Yeah. Can I do 2 seconds? Is that okay? Just a couple of minutes, basically. Don't ever forget these. You'll be surprised. Like I say, this is the most important thing that you're doing. It's getting people to do what you want them to do. And so many people leave it off. And there's even a correlation between the bigger it is, the more likely somebody is to click on it or follow what you want them to do. Yeah? Boink. Yeah, last thing actually. Just to give you it's okay to say all this and so, oh, why don't you do this? And why don't you do this? And why don't you do this? But I like this as a reference. Do you know what nest is? Anybody seen this? Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. Good. But I just like the way in which they follow basically everything I've just talked about. Yeah? So easy. Checks its battery so you don't have to just to scroll down a bit. Yeah? No more, worry less. Easy way to get information. And look here. It stays there all the time. And a little bit. Look at the amount of text. Look at what it's asking you to do. Yeah, okay, little cases come up. So again, you're talking storytelling all the time, all the way through this, which is a very overused thing, storytelling. Oh, we're into storytelling. Yeah, right. Again, lists in a nice way, a bit too much text heavy maybe, but lists in a nice way. Yeah, think before it speaks and how it does it. Yeah, see what's invisible, all about carbon monoxide. Yeah, works with your thermostat, blah, 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 blah. And then, call to action, call to action. Call to action's there all the time. And then at the end of it, go do it. Yeah? Active rather than passive. Just do it. And I'm pretty sure that's all I was going to say, but it's also all I have time for.